Outside of Nigeria, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to accept Western security guarantees for Ukraine as part of any future peace deal. This was revealed ahead of a potential trilateral summit involving Trump, Putin, and Ukrainian president aimed at ending the ongoing conflict. Trump emphasized that security assurances for Ukraine are a key element under serious consideration in ongoing diplomatic talks. Now, before the summit, Trump urged Ukraine to abandon its ambition to join NATO and its hopes of regaining Crimea, which Russia seized in 2014. Trump indicated that if talks with Zelensky proceed well, he expects to meet with Putin soon for a trilateral meeting focused on bringing an end to the war. I have with me retired diplomat Joe Kashi, foreign affairs analyst Zach Zhu, and international journalist Adeni Kuno join me now for this conversation on the latest meeting in efforts to end the Russian-Ukraine war. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Mr. Kuno, I'll start with you. And Trump has repeatedly changed his stance when it comes to the Ukraine-Russian war. We know that at the beginning he talked about 24 hours after taking office that he was going to sort this out. 8 months later, there's a ceasefire deal that has stalled, talks rather, that has stalled. He is saying that he and Putin are pushing for a peace deal that skips a ceasefire, putting them at odds with Zelensky, who is saying there will be no peace deal, no talk without a ceasefire. Does this bode well for these talks that Trump is championing?
It's very clear that the particular country that has suffered the most in this 3 years carnage happens to be Ukraine. We know that it doesn't bode well for any country to have the citizens lose their lives. But when there is war, especially at this level, there has to be mediation points, which I believe this second meeting of Trump with both leading countries, particularly Russia, as well as Ukraine, would have actually done a lot too. But you see, this actually doesn't seem to be the only issue on ground. When President Clinton was in power, there were issues, of course, following the dismemberment of the former USSR and how they have always talked about not moving NATO into what is close to Russian territory, particularly the way you don't want anything to do with, maybe some countries in Europe or some enemies of Russia in Cuba because of the proximity to the United States of America. And I listened to Clinton, who said for everything that Russia said it will do, at that point in time, Russia did. But everything that should have been done by the US and some allies were reneged upon. So when you look at the problem in Ukraine today, it is not just about the problem of Ukraine now, it's something that ties back. Let's look at when, for instance, Petro Poroshenko, who followed Viktor Yanukovych, was there. While there were clamors for Ukraine to become part of the European Union, of course, Viktor Yanukovych talked about wanting to remain as Ukraine, with a promise by Russia to give it, in terms of its economic problem, to support it with $20 billion back then. The powers that unsat Viktor Yanukovych were the ones that insult Petro Poroshenko, were the ones that perhaps also insult Vladimir Zelensky at the moment. So the issues that Russia has with Ukraine right now is not just about the Donbas region, about the Crimea region. It's about the fact that certain things are happening along the lines of NATO, European Union, that appears to put Russia in the wrong, but those things that put Russia in the wrong is not understood enough. And that seems to be why Russia continues to say, my perspective must be understood. Nobody, yes, wants to talk about the fact that they went into that country, invaded it, or the fact that some people are just talking about the invasion of the country. But what were the antecedents of these issues? So right now for Trump has realized it is not a linear issue. It's a complex compound problem that just saying it's going to resolve in one fell swoop it's not something that's going to happen. So you have to do a tie back or a track back a little bit and see how these things could be addressed. Now, the way Zelensky has been speaking, yes, as the leader of your country, you need to speak to these issues, but there must be concessions made. I don't know what kind of concessions will be made. Yes, Zelensky has talked about the fact that it's not considered a region, but I need to say this, that because more lives will be lost, there has to be a meeting point for those leaders, or else we're not going to have the bloodshed stop anytime soon. That's just how I want to begin here.
All right, Mr. Zhu, let me come to you and talk about, this summit that we've looked at. Trump has urged Ukraine to abandon its ambition to join NATO and its hope of reclaiming Crimea, even though Mr. Kunu doesn't think that should, stop peace talks. Most of the world really casts some sort of aspersion against Russia's annexation of that peninsula, and they say it's illegal. Russia should not be rewarded, however. That's what Zelensky is now saying for its participation in the war. And they're saying that, and Moscow must hear the word stop. That's what Zelensky said in response, I think, to Trump's call and urge for him to abandon his ambition to join NATO. I want to know your thoughts on these discussions along these lines and what it means.
It's so difficult to take it at face value because history is very complex. If I take an example of Nigeria, Nigeria as a state was put together by others who designed the borders. But those borders will always be disputed by those that understand the course of history. Ukraine is not different. Moscow has its own views about what the actual borders of Ukraine should be. And they would also say that history made mistakes by leaving some of the Russian-speaking people under what then became Ukrainian territory. Now, these are the issues at hand. So it's not as simple as looking at the war. Of course, I think there is a need, and probably President Trump is right. Whatever disputes there are, they must not be resolved through war, through the use of force, and also they must be everything must stop. There must be peace. And then people can negotiate. If there are issues of territory that are in dispute, that can be done. But President Trump holds the trump cards here. America is paying for the war in the most, although others are providing support. They provide most of the intelligence. They provide, if there is no America involvement in this war, it's difficult to see how others can fight against Russia for the longest. So in a way, you have to say the European leaders will have a position, the Ukrainian leader would have a position, but it has to be something that they can convince President Trump on, because without that, it's difficult to see how they can proceed without the Americans. But then if you flip it, Felicity, the other way, the Americans will be paying billions to support Europe, NATO, and whatever wars are going on. President Trump's approach has been, if he can stop the wars, then he reduces the bill that America has to pay. He reduces the probability that American lives will be lost.
All right, gentlemen, just hang on. We need to go on a very short break. When we come back, I have questions for you about, Mr. Kunu, about the trilateral meeting. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Kunu, I'll come with you with the questions. Zelensky, after the meeting, when asked to comment, said he was looking to talk about territorial issues when they have that trilateral meeting. From all that we know about Trump's efforts to, broker peace in this war that everybody's concerned about, what are the chances that Putin will show up for that planned trilateral meeting that's being promoted?
Let me remind us here first that the meeting with Putin and the meeting with Zelensky has not produced, in my assessment, a clear pathway into resolving the problems within the Ukraine-Russian territory. Let me establish that first. But what I want to put forward is, you need to understand the underlying motivation as to why Vladimir Putin himself has not been willing to meet with Zelensky, because this trilateral meeting is going to do what I call a balance of power, and it's going to ensure that there's trade-off with a semi-neutral mediator. If you look at the position of the European Union, they are 100%, the European Union is 100% with, with Ukraine and against Russia. The only thing the United States of America has done in this matter is that as the leading nation and sponsor of NATO, it has also expended up to 350 billion US dollars, amongst many other things, in support of what? Ukraine. But it has not been so much as supportive of Ukraine the way European Union has been supportive of it. So I can say it can actually be at that trilateral meeting as a neutral negotiator. Well, I needed to understand one thing. While Vladimir Putin was in the KGB of the USSR, Zelensky has not even started his comedic video shoots. So Vladimir Putin doesn't see Zelensky, although the president of the country, as a leader worthy of being in the same room with him. And do not also forget, the parent country has been Russia. You need to understand global policy and dynamics, the hegemonies of the Eastern Bloc. So I'm simply saying that when we're talking about this trilateral meeting, one of the things it can do is to first of all balance power. Then when balance of power has been achieved, then you can see both persons that are what? First persons in the narratives come face to face so that nobody will mistake one another for the further conversations. That's what I want to put forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kunu. Mr. Zhu, just your thoughts on the fact that despite all these talks going on, all the efforts, all the negotiations, Russia is still attacking Ukraine. I mean, there were recent attacks even just before the meetings happened. What does this tell you about the whole process? Are you worried, or is this negotiation going to actually end this war? I know it's time limited. 1 minute, please.
Yeah, it is about the dynamics. Both the French President, Francois Macron, and the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, did say that what they wanted to see was a ceasefire first. But in the talks, it appears that in the talks in Alaska between President Putin and President Trump, that point was raised, and their decision appears, or so we hear, to have been that they just want to go straight to peace talks and stop the war, because any ceasefire will lead to disputes in terms of territory and who is occupying what during the course of that time, or give others some opportunity to restock and then make new attacks. So it appears that they have agreed that they will just be peace talks straight away. President Trump needs these peace talks before the Nobel Prize winner is decided. He wants the war to be stopped. He wants to prove to the world that he can be effective in stopping wars. President Zelensky knows that once the war ends, then there will be elections, and it's difficult to know what will happen then. Felicity.
Gentlemen, thank you so much, Mr. Kunu and Mr. Zhu, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.